So hello everyone, hello our dear guests, hello our viewers. My name is Diana, here is Masha, and here's also Tyfenn, and we are the members of the Luksuz team and hosts of today's discussion. Here we have also two invited eco-activists. Could you please tell us a bit about yourself?
So I'm Katrin, I'm 25, I'm still studying. I'm part of a local group in Nova Gorica, and that's really the general info.
Cool, thank you.
So I'm Nicoleta. I'm part of the local group in Brežice, but previously I was pretty active in Ljubljana. Now I'm more active in Brežice because of the coronavirus. Shortly, I'm a student of microbiology. I really care about the environmental issue, especially the part of biodiversity and the concepts that I really like, and I'm trying to emphasize in my work is degrowth, which I will be telling more about soon.
Cool, thank you very much. So we're all here today to discuss ecological situation in Slovenia, ecoactivism, climate change, and not also to describe the problems, but also to find out the solutions. And our first question is, could you tell us a little bit more about your organization? Because if I understand you correctly, you are both are representatives of organization Vladi Zapodnevno Pravic, which means young people for climate change, right? But you are the representatives of different local kind of structures, yes? So could you describe the structure, your main goals, and etc.?
Well, we do a lot of work on regional levels because we're like all over the country. We also do a lot of work in mixed groups on a national level. Due to the corona, we have a lot more local-based group because it's because it's just easier this way. But we're very well connected on a national level, and we do a lot of projects that are not based on location, but rather on specific problematics. So we have different work groups within the organization, with each focusing on separate tasks of like the whole, like everything. So we have a group that handles, for example, press relations. We have a group for social media, and it's all really based on what someone is interested in. So what's really great about us is everyone can choose exactly where they want to work and what they want to do. And with that, they also have a really good support system behind them that, you know, is always ready to help, and everyone gets engaged whenever they have time or whenever something that really interests them pops up. So we're really flexible, and we work on being connected, on keeping in touch, and have everyone know what's going on all over the country. We're not really separating local groups from the whole thing. So yeah, we really work on helping one another and being connected. So we know we're a whole group. We're not different parts of something. So that's what I really want to emphasize. And very simply said, like our name implies, we want climate justice, you know, we want natural resources preserved. We want clean drinking water, clean air, ground that's not contaminated, that we can grow our own food on and be as self-sufficient as possible. But besides that, we want to also acknowledge that we are part of the nature in a lot of ways as a collective humanity, not as individuals. We have essentially brought this climate crisis on. So responsibility needs to be taken, and those who continue contributing to the crisis the most need to be held accountable. So we sadly have a system that allows harmful action against nature still and doesn't seem to align with our beliefs. On a bigger scale, we are fighting for climate justice, but really we're fighting for a fair system that is also preserving the nature. So we can't have one without the other.
Every time I hear someone represent Youth for Climate Justice, I'm just so amazed that I'm part of this movement. And it's like, Katrin, you said it so well. We are, in a sense, one could say deorganized. We don't have any kind of hierarchy. We have direct actions, direct democracy, and if you want to take action, you just do it. And we believe that it will be aligned as much as possible with climate justice and the values that the movement is growing. So I would just emphasize this, that this is all volunteering work. We have no systemic help or any kind of we do have finances, but that's more like a friend or someone who support an organization that support us, gives us some financial support. We don't have any kind of like finances from the government or anything like that. And we are trying to be decentralized. So, for example, Katrin is in her region and I'm, for example, in my region, and there are many others like us. And maybe I would focus rather on the Youth for Climate Change here in Brežice, which is actually something that is just starting to kick off. And it was always more of a group of individual people who had time, maybe some extra time in their lives, and they organized either an event or a direct action. That's just the beginning, I would say. But then, I realized that it always takes time with this kind of movements, and I think we need to acknowledge that the rural places, the places which are not like highly urban cities, it's really different to get active people together rather than like in the city. It's really easy. In Ljubljana, you have so many activists, but here in Brežice, for example, it's way harder. It's even harder to expose yourself because you get way bigger pressure on you if you address some like important people. Yeah. So there's a difference, but the structure that we have in the movement enables us to still act. So
but different region can gather and do something together, right?
Yep. Most definitely we can have like bigger projects. We had this idea of cycling through the whole Slovenia and like going from one city to another, and I don't know, having organized trips or something like that. It's possible because we know each other. As you can see, I know Katrin, which is from another place in Slovenia. And
yeah, I noticed that in Slovenia everybody knows each other, or at least have some common friends.
It's a small country.
Yeah. It really seems like you are very well connected. Yeah. Thank you very much. And if someone would be interested to know more about the organization and their activities, we will post some links and emails and information in the description of this video, so you can freely observe and don't hesitate to contact
join. Of course, everyone is free to join. Like if you are from Krško or Brežice or Ljubljana or from anywhere in Slovenia or maybe even outside, and you feel like you want to support this movement or join the movement, they are more than welcome to write something to us.
Yeah, so to give us like a global vision of the situation in Slovenia, could you maybe estimate like the environmental situation?
I don't even know where to start. Yeah, okay, regarding the environmental aspect, so the nature that we have in Slovenia, everyone says that the nature here is beautiful and there's a lot of protected areas by the Spomenica, or they are under the Natura 200. But the problem, I think, in Slovenia is that even though we have all these green areas, the regulation of it is not as good as it should be. And what is happening is that firms, businesses, different kind of entities, even governmental bodies, they're careless about preserving this nature. So maybe you have a protected area, and yet you have some actors in our country or a business that is building on that territory, which is absolutely unacceptable. And if we take a more progressive look at Natura 200, it's not enough. So it needs to be upgraded. And intervening in nature already today is a really terrible thing. And regarding the fact that we are having the climate crisis, it's even more terrible. So I think the biggest problem to us is currently the government, which is really clueless about preserving nature, the climate crisis, and even how to tackle it, how to come up with good solutions. And the saddest part is that they don't only have no clue about how to save this situation, they also kind of block any kind of people, organizations who are trying to have good solutions, who are trying to think about how we could move things forward into a direction where we could live within our planetary borders, for example, or with like ecologically, things like that. So that's the first problem. Another problem is obviously the farming, which is always a problem because we're intervening in nature and destroying natural habitats for the sake of providing food, which is normal. The problem is how we do it, and the how we do it right now is not good enough and even destructive. And the thing is, these destructive matters are being subsidized, for example, and farmers have no choice to do it otherwise because the subsidies are giving money to these farmers to do it exactly that way. And the last thing I think that we are not tackling enough with any kind of our national documents, at least the ones that we're checking them out, we're not tackling enough our mobility and the way we are using transport. We're rather building roads and selling cars instead of promoting public transporting and maybe rethinking, reimagining our way of working. So like instead of asking these questions, we go for the old way. Yeah. So that's the problems, I would say.
I mean, there really isn't much to add to this. Nikki has already said it so well. But yeah, the situation is bad. While there is a lot of organizations and individuals who are trying to make an impact and trying to be heard, it often feels like talking to walls. And while being an active citizen is always good for the community and is welcomed, it can also be very isolating and stressful because sometimes no matter how loud you are, if there's no one to listen, it might feel like it's all for nothing. And this collective hopelessness is really not a productive thing. So yeah, that's a problem. And we really need more empowerment for people who now depend on the mercy of those in charge, and there's sometimes really selfish interests. Let's be honest, the politicians don't always have the same interests as the people they should be working for. We definitely also need better laws. They're not full of loopholes or ambiguous, but most of all, we need representatives that listen to the people they represent and work for a better society.
Also regarding this issue, regarding governments and corporation, as a result of the production of different goods, etc., there is a lot of pollution. We all know that they make a huge amount of money, and it's hard to believe that soon, like that in the nearest time, they will change their strategy, how to deal with it.
Me and Nicoleta are both quite on the same page about this. So capitalism is most definitely to blame for the situation, or at least it's speeding up the climate crisis. So it has a really big impact on it, because the interests of capitalism are not do not go hand in hand with climate justice.
Sure.
So we have firms that do as they please and are successfully in doing so, just so that they can grow and grow more. And the problem here is that the idea of striving towards endless accumulation of capital, like you need to have this and you need to have that, you need to have more and more and more, and there's like basically no limit to that. So yeah, we need to regulate the politics, like I already said, or politics should regulate them. As long as the laws allow these corporations to continue doing what they are doing, they will not change, because that's not in their interests. And yes, it is hard to believe they will just one day wake up and, you know, change their ways out of nothing.
Sorry, even if the directors want to change something, it will cost really a lot of money to switch from current operation processes to more eco-friendly. So
Exactly.
Even I think nowadays, if you want to do like a really green business, it's really hard for those people. I think like harder if you would do something that it's not sustainable, because, you know, if you want to make something sustainable, you need much better materials, you need like more quality work. It makes sense that the work of this person is then a lot more expensive. But in capitalism, we're all used to lower prices. So because there's so much product on the market and so much competition, companies have to constantly like lower their prices to keep up with the others doing so. So it's basically the competition between companies, like how cheap can I go, you know, to make the people happy, to get them to buy things from me. But like someone suffers because of that lowering of the price. If I maybe go back, the idea of, you know, the hustle and how hard work and really striving toward financial success is pushed on us, that's a very good method to shift people away from the real problems and make us focus on one thing, which is earn more money so you can buy this and you can be happy and you can survive. You know, you need food, you need money to put food on the table. But in reality, we don't really need money. What we need is a clean environment that allows us to sustain ourselves. You know, we can't eat money. That's, you know, how they say, when all the, you know, we'll figure out when we have destroyed everything else that money cannot save us. What can save us is saving what has been given to us, what's natural, what's around us, because nature is made this way, so it sustains us if we don't destroy it, of course, and if we work in nature's interest as well. So yeah, I think money is really the problem right now. It's the center of capitalism, accumulation, and really glamorizing this financial success, which in reality means nothing, because we know money doesn't really make us happy. It does make for a comfortable life, but that could be achieved even without money, I believe.
If I can chip in just with the degrowth critics on capitalism and the way that it strives towards accumulation of capital. That's the main problem. So it's not like money as a method of valuing things and, you know, making it easy to like the value of one work and of work or a process of work or a thing. It's just like easy to deal with it with money as a medium to do it. But then you have the problem of capitalism is the strive towards growth. Growth of GDP will bring us better lives, which is completely untrue. And what hides behind this is debt. We are creating more and more debt because that's the thing that keeps the capitalism machine going. And degrowth focuses exactly on that aspect of capitalism, and that's the main thing that we need to address, because we are creating debt towards no one. It's not something that really affects us humans. We cannot bleed because of it, although people do bleed because of that if we look at corporate actions. Yeah, that growth paradigm is the problem. So we need to start reimagining another world. We need to start thinking how in other manners we can make our lives normal, livable, decent. How can we provide for our food, water, clean earth, clean air, and food and societies that are where we feel like we belong and that empower us, that we think about solutions. So that's something I would add up, and that's something I think climate justice focuses on. So that's the definition of climate justice. It's not just that we are trying to solve this one specific issue, the climate crisis. We also have many different crises: the crisis of biodiversity, the social crisis. We have workers around the world that are miserable or like working all the time, having no time to think about the climate crisis or their families, or to spend more time in nature, like name it, whatever you want. So that's the problem that we're trying as a movement to emphasize in our daily actions or projects or ideas, anything.
Yeah, agree. So let's assume that I want to be maximum eco-friendly, live in peace with nature, but at the same time still be social. What should I do? I should quit my job and refuse to use any goods produced by any companies, you know, plastic and etc. What do you think about it?
Or maybe not, maybe exists another way to live eco-friendly.
Yeah.
I would say it's really, really hard to be 100% eco-friendly, and you know, it's impossible to do everything right. We're just human beings and we make mistakes all the time in all areas, you know, in our lives. So I would definitely not tell you to quit your job and, you know, refuse to use anything. But I think it starts with being mindful about things. Probably most of us who are activists have been pushed into it because we in our personal lives noticed something we can improve or change for ourselves, and then that led to a bigger action. I just want to say that I really believe the responsibility should for changing things and making them better should not be placed on a single person, you know. The biggest contributors to climate change are not individuals who use plastic straws. When corporations change their ways, people will have to follow suit. And it all depends on what direction they will take. For example, it does not help that people, for example, recycle if the recycling company just ends up mixing all the trash up anyways. there's this pretense that if you recycle, that makes it okay to produce enormous amounts of trash. Often that trash is not even suitable for recycling, or even if it is, it does not always end up recycled. So why would we not make this process a little, simpler? Just remove the materials we know we can't recycle, we know are polluting the nature for sure, and find a way to actually reduce the amount of trash instead of making someone look like a bad person for using a straw or a plastic cup. I mean, I think it's just bizarre. So if we didn't have an option of using plastic cups, no one would be able to use them. So why?
But at the same time, while there is a demand on this product, corporations will continue to make it. So this is another side of the coin.
Yes,
So
that's true, but yeah, that's
It's
like
the
it's a double sword.
demand supply
Yeah.
issue. That's what
Yeah.
you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, but I think it would be much easier for corporations to change things, because I mean they can do whatever they want anyways, and we will be forced to accept what they're doing, no matter what they do. If what they do something bad or good, like we accept it, because what choice do we have, right? I mean, it is possible to not buy like food that's wrapped in plastic. Like we do have options, but it's not available for everyone, or it's harder for someone to shop this way. Like that's not the usual way. So I think, yeah, it's easier for corporations to change these things, for example, to use more paper packaging, than it would be to convince like the whole human race to stop buying plastic. Because yeah, people have different interests, and definitely it's not like everyone is gonna always do something for the higher good, because obviously everyone has to survive, right? So yeah, I think a sustainable lifestyle, being 100% responsible adult who does everything right and never anything harmful to anyone or anything, I would say that's close to impossible, or at least very, very hard, because we are enabled in doing the opposite, not most often not really knowing at whose expense.
Maybe I would just like to point out these questions that haunts me. Do we buy a new car because we want a new car, and that new car will enable us an easier living, or do we buy that new car because we have seen so many advertisements of this car bringing us happiness? So that's like the questions that I pose to politicians, to everyone who say, you know what, but we cannot do anything because the demand is the way this world goes round. The thing is, it cannot be like that. If you are a working class family having the minimum wage, two parents having the minimum wage, for example, you cannot go to a shop and choose to buy the more expensive products or goods, because you simply you have that option, but it's not really an option to you. You just simply have to buy the plastic wrapped tomatoes, and that's it. Or even worse, you have to buy yourself some fast food, and that's how you live from day to day. And then again, we come to inequality that is connected to the social issue, the social economic issue, and also with the climate crisis. It just, the connection is really far-fetched, but it's there, especially when we talk about these people who don't have this all the privilege options, and the way they're going to be affected. We all know very well that the way that climate crisis works is those who do less harm will be most affected. And communities like that are poor communities, not that are poor, the communities that are being exploited rather than poor, let's fix it to that, are gonna be way more affected by the climate crisis. And even this privilege of thinking of the solutions for the climate crisis, you have this privilege because, for example, I'm an activist, and I might have been in many positions in my life where I was not in privilege, but I think I deem myself privileged because I can think of solutions about climate crisis. I can read complicated drafts and papers that governments write and think about how to change my local community in order to be more resilient to the climate crisis that is coming up or is already happening. That's something that I can do, but many others can't, because either they're working full time for the minimum wage, and when they are not working, they're just trying to rest, but you know, or they don't even come up with this idea of thinking about it, just because we have such a narrow idea of how life should look like: work, consumption, sleep.
Yeah. The majority.
Because it is so nicely pointed out, I think when you have an option of saying your truth, and when you have a voice, you're not only speaking for yourself, but you're also speaking for those who cannot speak up for very different reasons. So I think it's not an option to ever be quiet, especially when our world is pretty much being destroyed in front of our eyes. So we're not doing this just for ourselves, but for those who are not in a position to fight due to the unjust system.
Yeah, I think we all can agree that economical situation really affects eco situation, and also social inequality also plays its role in this situation. But what's your opinion? Is economical system the only and the main reason of our environmental problems? Can you also figure out another reasons or not?
This is such a hard question. I'm looking so hard for another reasons, but I just cannot come up with it. I mean, for me, it always comes to the system that we have created, because within that system, we created all the paradigms, the way, the narration of how we should live, the narration of how we should consume, the narration of how we should think about decision making, about democracy, about our work. It's everything just so connected with the economic, social system. But yeah, I mean, I would say all the crisis of biodiversity is obviously connected with extraction of natural resources, which are being done, I can name them. Then the Shell company, different oil companies, they have names and everything. It's not like humanity's fault. It's more of a very specific corporate decisions that are destroying the biodiversity, the climate, also the pollution crisis that we're having, because obviously recycling is just a myth that was sold to us for the sake of feeling better, not seeing the problem again.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I have no clue. For me, it's really nothing else than the neoliberal capitalism that we're living in. It's maybe not the problem of this system. Like, the problem is that it has colonized every other culture. We have just this culture. Well, maybe in the places, because I'm white and I live where I live in Slovenia. Maybe that's because I don't see this. Obviously, there are other cultures that have different ways of values of different needs and the way they fulfill these needs. And I'm very thankful for that. And I think we should be looking for solutions in those cultures. I just think that, yeah, the problem is the diversity of these cultures just disappeared with trying to do it just that one specific way.
I mean, I agree in a lot of ways with Nicoleta. I think we're just thrown into this system that made up its own rules that we never really agreed to, but we're forced to live by them. So it's really like, I wouldn't blame someone for buying an IKEA bed when I know he might not be able to afford something more sustainable, something that's not, a product of cheap labor and so on. So like Nikki said, it's really a complex question that this could be talked about all day, days. And just finding one solution for everything is impossible.
Yeah.
To stay like more focused on individual, how to convince people that reckless intervention in nature inevitably affects their own lives.
I don't really think people need much convincing because we're all living it, and I think every single person must have already noticed some impact on their personal lives. The question then is more, how do we convince people to join the fight and to be active citizens who contribute and who are trying to be active in this cause? So yeah, the question is really, people should join in groups with like-minded people. People should organize, people should make plans, people should locate the problems around them. The easiest way is to start with yourself. So when you see what you could be doing better, you also get ideas for, okay, how do we make this a bigger thing? How do we get more people to join, get more people to do things a better way? So yeah, definitely everyone who's interested in this kind of work should join a community, an organization that has the same interest as them. Find people who think the same as you, because the power is always in the numbers, right? Like, the bigger you are, the stronger you are, the more people you have to do different work. But being on your own is in every aspect much harder. So I would definitely suggest to everyone who's interested in these issues to join a group that's working on it, and try to get as active as possible and vote.
True. Voting is also important. You asked how to convince people that intervention in nature is bad for our lives too. And I think, well, I'm gonna tell a short story about when I was taking a course of ecological anthropology. I opened the book up and it said that realizations don't usually, it doesn't necessarily mean that realizing something, you will also take action. So the correlation of between these two, it's not really a thing. That made me think actually that it's not always like educational. If you educate and you agitate and you tell people this is wrong, blah, 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 that this will change the thing. I think the problem why we as humanity, or, as communities, as individuals, we don't see the correlation of our lives being dependent on natural resources and ecosystemic services. So we need natural resources and ecosystemic services because we are the part of ecosystem. So in order to get food, water, shelter over our heads, we need all that. The problem is, again, oh my God, I'm gonna go back to the economic social system.
No other way.
Yes, the problem is that when you go to IKEA and buy a bed, it's just that, a bed that you have bought with money. You don't maybe at first hand realize that there needs to be a tree that is being cut down to make that bed. In the past, they lived with nature and they relied on, they were self-sufficient and they relied on the natural resources that they had around. We have some beautiful stories here in Brežice and Krško, the way people lived with nature, and that meant they realized, they knew that if there is no wild river, there's not going to be fish. If there's no forest, there's not going to be wood. And that's why we should preserve our ecosystems. And that makes so much sense. Today, we live in a city, for example, and you don't have forests there or a wild river. You have just a channel and some trees here and there, and yet you still get to buy those beds. So I think that the problem is that we don't see the direct, and because we don't see it like that, because human, I think apparently we're not capable of thinking otherwise. We just have to see it in front of our nose.
Yeah.
That's the problem, why we don't understand that we need nature and that we are part of nature.
Yeah, and the majority of people unfortunately just focus on their daily life, you know, and they don't understand that every decision they make when buying something affecting the environmental situation in the whole world, and that everything that they buy, for example, plastic, it will return to them in a bad way, and polluted water and air and etc.
Yes, but then again, can we blame them? Can we blame ourselves for this kind of organization of our natural resources? It's really a complicated, as we can see, a very complex question, and nothing wrong with complexity, but a complex indeed.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with you.
Despite like going to a local community or like a local movement about environment, like which step I could take to become an activist and be efficient?
This is such a hard question. And really, even though I had the time to prepare, it's really always hard to answer it, because there's always, especially if you are from a rural place, and especially if you're a young human being trying to be active, but you know, the common narrative is that you should get into politics or start a business, or I don't know, something similar to that, which is, I will not curse because we want this to be child friendly. But I would say, well, first of all, start thinking of what you care about, and start talking about it, putting it out on the family table. I know that's a terrible place to put issues, social issues or ecological issues on the family table, but it's worth it because you get better at argumenting your points of view. And this is quite a good start, but getting all this knowledge is most definitely not enough. Connecting with other people is always the best solution, the best way to get activated. You start creating something, I guess, and you also empower each other. That's the thing. The most amazing thing about the movement is the movement of Youth for Climate Change is that we have each other, and you have this support mental support even, which is also very important, I would like to emphasize. And this feeling that you're actually normal. It's okay that you're worried about the environment, for example. And having a community that shares the same feelings and values, it's really great. And at the same time, you have this feeling of fulfillment if you do like an action, a direct action, if you do a project. I'm really out of ideas right now, but creating a community is a good step, but it's a hard one. It demands a lot of time and self-empowerment up until a point where you get other people around you. Then I would say in a local environment, the best way to start is to start analyzing the situation around you. If you, for example, if you're a local activist I will just speak for myself, from Brežice, and trying to improve the local situation regarding the biodiversity, climate crisis, blah, blah, blah. The best way is to start analyzing. Look around, look at the interactions that the people have in the city or the place that you live in. Look at the environmental situation. If you have a river, is it dammed? So that's, for example, you note this as a problem that needs to be solved. Do you have any forests? If not, why do you not have forests? Should you have a forest near you? And these questions will then kind of push you and motivate you to get going, to get together some people and either create a mini forest or I don't know, create an event or maybe write a book, a poetry. So this, I would say, is the best way to start. Organizing in communities, and then like get out there, spend time in nature instead of like all the time. We have this common thing that you start being an activist and then you start writing the long opinions on Facebook and writing to politicians that don't really listen. It's really better to spend time in nature because you feel better about yourself. You don't stare all the time in the computer, which is also great from the energy perspective.
For sure.
And at the same time, you're doing a great job for the future work that might come. You are analyzing the nature surrounding you and even thinking and creating solutions for when you are ripe or time is perfect to put that solutions out.
Yeah.
I agree. Like, once again, we're pretty much on the same side here, like regarding everything. We have said it so many times. It's very important to get working with groups that think the same as you, but also educate yourself. You don't have to go directly to action work. You can just find some more knowledge. And there is a lot of different ways you can contribute. Our movement, for example, sometimes it just needs a graphic designer. We don't need you to come to a protest, just make us this thing. So there is really a lot of things a person can do. Maybe the problem sometimes is we're too self-critical, so we don't really know what we can contribute, or we don't have the courage to show our abilities. So I really just want to emphasize that we're very welcoming of everyone, and we want everyone to feel included, and to help them, go step by step towards becoming an activist, because the fact is no one is born an activist, but it takes some effort and some work. I don't even know why someone would call themselves an activist. Like, it's pretty much just a person who cares. So I don't know why we have a specific word for that. So
An active person, that's it.
Yeah.
I also,
yeah.
we are I'm an active person. I think about the environment around me.
Yeah, like I think it feels a bit pretentious to say like I'm an activist, you know, like Nikki said, you don't often know what does that mean to that person, you know, is it just writing long opinions, or is it like actually actively engaging and doing work? But I know, I mean, this is another topic altogether. Definitely join a movement that interests you. There is so many for, I think, every problem we have. Don't be discouraged by, you know, lack of experience, because that's what you only get if you're actively doing something and trying. And I really believe anyone can contribute, and you're already doing a really good work just thinking about this, you know, just thinking to yourself, I want to do better, I want to be better, I want to do this, I want to do that. That means you're not a passive individual who is just blind to everything outside their little world and has the ability to see the bigger picture, which is what we desperately need. And that's it. Yeah, join us. We'll be really happy to have you.
Yeah, and also if there is no community created, you are good enough to start one.
Just returning back a bit to these dinner talks with whole family about environmental issues. Yeah, what do you think is a difference in perceptions of these environmental issues of X, Y, and Z generations? You know, is it changing for the better or for the worse?
I feel that the talking that is being done around the environmental issues is like spiking, and I'm really grateful for that. And you can also see we are called Youth for Climate Justice, but there's no way it's just youth people working on this. It's really like all kind of generations, and that's amazing because we get to exchange.
Yeah.
Obviously you have a different perspective on life and things because of your age, because you grew up in another system, different values, blah blah blah, and of course that is enriching. That's what I wanted to say before and I forgot, because we always think the solutions are like that one solution that unifies us and we all need to be unified and everything. No, we enrich each other with different opinions, and nature works like that. Nature, the biodiversity is the best thing that can happen, and diversity is also key when you look at the humanity and human communities. It's just boring, first of all, to have just solely one opinion, because then that means you are stagnating. You cannot go further on.
Yeah.
So that's the beautiful part of connecting with elderly and young people and people from school, you know, like small children. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, agree. Completely agree.
But maybe that another perspective is that older people tend to be some or in general tend to be more conservative regarding the issues, or maybe they just don't have the amount of information that we youngsters have, for example. And then I had to spend 1 year or maybe more at home with my family to explain to them why we cannot it's not us who drives the climate crisis with our decisions of buying cheap tomatoes in plastics. It's really a bigger thing, and I am able to do that because I know how to surf the internet, and I have a lot of time on my hands. I don't know, I read books, I exchange. For me, it's really, I'm not conservative, so that means I have no problems talking to a new human being through Zoom. For my parents, it's obviously different. So I guess that's the worst thing. It's not a bad thing. It's problem that we can solve, and it's just like great, because we get again to exchange ideas. But then the problem is when it comes to the urgency of acting, I guess. That's the problematic part.
Yeah.
I definitely think the easiest thing to do for like any generation is blame the next one and then try to get them to fix it, you know, like it's never anyone's fault, which is often seen everywhere and everything. For example, a generation of my parents, they realize that what we have come to is a problem because even though things are very rapidly changing, maybe just like already 50 years ago, things were not like this. So for sure they notice, but they're maybe, you know, trying to put the responsibility of fixing it on the younger generations, which is kind of logical to me because like the younger you are, the more energy you have, the more motivation you have to change things for your future. I think maybe the older you are, the more you have this mentality of, okay, I need to slow down, I need to do things for myself, I've already worked my whole life, why would I torture myself further? I personally grew up in a boom of information. My parents did not have access to a computer or internet when they were young, but I do, so I can educate, like we can educate those who don't know better, and we can help each other, as Nikki said. And definitely, I think the responsibility on us is to do better than the previous generation. Not that it should be our task to fix their mistakes, but it would be like we wouldn't be responsible if it would just continue living like this just because our parents did and our grandparents did, you know. You always have an option of breaking a cycle, and yeah, it starts with yourself. So yeah, we need to really see where we can make a change and also work with others, and help them maybe achieve the same knowledge or know things that they just don't know already and didn't have a chance to learn. So the differences are not something to be judged, but rather, like Nikki said, appreciated, because everyone can learn something from someone else always, and no one has all the knowledge in the world.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah.
So, okay, now we understand what can we do as individual, how can we contribute personally, but what can we do when we are united? What can we do as an organization? For example, what your organization are doing now to improve the situation, and what solutions do you propose? I mean, on the global level, not personal.
Yeah, of course. Like, I am not buying plastic bags. Okay, jokes aside. So as before, I mentioned the really good start is to look around your environment and re-establish that connection with nature. So where's a river? Where's a forest? Do we have all that? How maybe like discovering how people in the past were connected to nature, etc. And we in Brežice are currently doing exactly that. We are trying to look around, and we're really specifically focused on the river Sava. Okay, actually the river Sava, river Krka, and river Sotla. And we are also doing a project. It's just kicking off. The concept of the project is already developed, but we are yet to make it happen. And what we are doing specifically is trying to recreate or remind people that there is this connection with nature through, and we're going to do this in a very fun way by creating a podcast. It will be a storytelling podcast, let's say, and it will emphasize different aspects on a river, how local cultures were connected to the local environment, local rivers. How is this affecting us today? How we're looking at the river, for example. So it's really a very specific project, for example. And why we're trying to do that is the fact that we realized argumentation is usually not enough, especially in a rural area. You have scientific explanations of why rivers should be preserved, but it's just not fruitable. People are not touched by arguments, and therefore there's this another aspect that we will be trying to address, which is the emotional aspect. The power of stories are underestimated, I think, and through that storytelling we will be trying to boil those emotions in human beings, in local people that live here, and trying to emphasize this all the other aspects on nature, on ecosystems that we usually don't get in schools or in our everyday lives, in media. So that's the specific project. But then the way we are thinking about it, or the way I'm thinking about the future, is by analyzing all these environmental issues around us. There's also this possibility, and I hope that I will be able to implement this in the future, the possibilities of improving forest management, of improving our landscapes, for example, to make it more bee friendly, maybe connecting even with local farmers and trying to find a better solution, or maybe just bringing them closer to environmental friendly farming. So things like that can also be big scale, and that can be a job even in the future. If you become an organization like that, it's easily feasible. The problem right now is that we're just a movement. So nothing of these big ideas can happen if you're just a movement. You always need, that reminds me, actually, that's the problem. Because when you want to do something, when you want to act, you have the solutions, you also have the knowledge, but then you hit this terrible wall of not the economics, I don't know, the narrative of how change come. So changes come either from creating a business or going into politics, something like that. Or maybe, the NGO, if you're a non-governmental organization. And that's a terrible way to make change happen. Like, what if we're just some village people, a village that wants to reestablish a forest and make it more manageable, and get wood out of it for self-sufficiency. This is like an idea that people come up with, but then you just hit a wall. Like, you don't know how to do this because you need financing, and financing can happen only through those narrow channels of either you become a firm or something like that in order to make that happen. And I think that's, again, another problem, systemic problem, that we need to address. We need to start changing the way ideas are being implemented, and not just by one actor or two actors, or like a small amount of people, politicians, a business. It's rather like we should focus on communities and how to empower these communities that they take action on their own.
So right now, on a local scale, we are dealing with a company that incinerates waste. This is, a project that where we really want to support the local people, because I personally am not from like right there, but I'm close. And I know they have been dealing with this problematic for a really, really long time and have not been heard at all. So we're talking like maybe about a few hundred people, you know, sending petitions, sending their signatures, saying we want to do this, we want to do that, and they are being completely ignored. So right now we, for example, have a project and we intend to do like to offer support to them, basically, not like try to take away from them and do like come in as saviors, but rather empower the local people, you know, be the support system for them, help them be heard and get the changes that they want. Besides from that, in one of the groups that I work in, we are doing a project about making the cities more green. So I really don't know how much I can say about this, but it's a really fun project that's basically this, promoting more trees, more greenery in the cities, educating how trees help in cities, because for example, you know, we know some places, for example in Ljubljana, but in every city probably where there's not much trees, it gets a lot more hotter, for example. So we have like analysis of hot points in a city, and like really fun stuff. I can't wait for it to start. It's gonna be so good. I don't want to say too much about this, but this is one of the projects. But yeah, basically we're doing everything, like as much good work as humanly possible. It's really hard to like cover everything, but we're really trying to identify urgent matters. I think even on a national level of our organization, not that we have to choose what we're gonna deal with or like make some matter more important than the other, but we really have to take into consideration, you know, our limits, how much people we can have working on this. You know, it's, I mean, the easiest thing to do is just to say someone should do this, you know, or you know, just thinking about why doesn't anyone do something, you know. But well, first of all, it's not that easy, and second of all, you know, why don't you also try to do it? So it would be much easier if all the talkers would just join in and do some work. So yeah, we're just trying to push for positive changes with different projects. I think anyone who's interested should keep up with us on our Facebook page or on our Instagram and just follow our work, because we constantly try to have things going on and do something at all times. That's pretty much it.
Thank you very, very much. As for me, this conversation was really hope-giving and empowering, because now I see not only the problems, but also solutions, and I understand that we can do something. So if you're really interested, if you're really interested, join Vladni za podnebnu pravičnost. That's a bit hard and complicated for me to say the name, so sorry if I'm wrong, but that's not the end. We have for you one little bonus question.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky, but yeah, what do you think? Human is a king of the nature or just a part of a food chain?
I have no problem saying the second. Most surely we are not on the top of the food chain. That would be the mycelium. But yeah, we're just a part of the ecosystem. We're just part of nature. We are also nature. That's, I guess, the most important thing to realize, is that we're not separated from nature and we can control it. I mean, we try to, but unsuccessfully, and it's going to harm us back anyway. So the sooner we accept this fact that we're also nature and that we are part of nature, like any other animal, it's just going to be easier for that. The difference is between us realizing what we, not realizing what we do, but just because of our prefrontal cortex, I guess, we control our actions. We have this ability to control our actions. We have other animals that are just instinctively, they function the way they do, and this function is ecosystemic, and they cannot do it the wrong way. While human beings, we have no limits, and the thing is, we should start thinking about how to put limits to our actions in order not to harm nature too much. So just like the right amount of intervening in nature, so that we can have a decent life, but also our generations that come after ours.
I definitely agree that we're just a part of the system and we are in no way kings of anything. But like Vicky said, yes, we have a rational mind that sometimes convinces us we are somehow better than other animals. But yeah, definitely, I completely agree. I have nothing to add.
I also think so.
But I guess it's hard to accept that.
Yeah, but it's life. We have to be realistic. It's nothing wrong with it, it's nature.
Yeah, exactly.
That's of it.
There's a lot of beauty in that, actually.
Yeah.
I think it's important to highlight this.
Yeah.
If you have something to add, feel free. And
Yeah.
Yes, I would just like to thank you so much for giving us the platform that we have. It's sometimes hard to reach out to people, and like when you have different organizations that just say, hey, we want to give you the floor, I would just like to say that I'm really grateful for that too. And it comes as help. So really, thank you.
Yeah, thank you too for participation. It's really cool, and hopefully it will help to grow the audience and to grow amount of activists. And the more people do some actions, the better the world will be.
hopefully it would bring some new members in your team. But that's not a promotion, we are not paid.
And again, all contacts are in the description, so you're always welcome to reach organizations and girls directly.
Thank you very much for sharing your point of view and for explaining us some things, because we understand sometimes our question was a bit tricky.
Yes, but they were very good.
I just have a question, like, could I join? Because I don't speak Slovenian, could I join still?
Yes.
Nice, cool. Then I will. You have one more.
Ah, yes, that's it. The point of this is that's so cool. I'm really glad that it inspired you. And of course, stay in touch, and we will make something happen.
It's really, really interesting. And I learned a lot of stuff, and now I really feel like, okay, I want to do something. I want to be part of it.
Yeah, let's stay in touch, and maybe we will discuss another further project together, because we're active, you're active, and that's the option.
And again, thank you for your time, boss. It was really, really nice.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yep.
I think are both really happy we agreed to do this.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.